You may not have heard of Don, but you've probably heard of his father, Don Miguel Ruiz. So Don Miguel Ruiz, Jose's father, wrote a classic book called The Four Agreements. He also wrote a book called Mastery of Love. And these two books have become staples in the spiritual nonfiction book world. In fact, The Four Agreements was #1 on the spiritual bestsellers list as recently as summer this year, 19 years after it was first written. So these books have touched millions, tens of millions of lives. But after The Four Agreements, a new book emerged by Don Jose. He wrote The Fifth Agreement, which is a beautiful book that takes the Four Agreements and adds a new dimension to it. Now, if you've never heard of the Four Agreements and the Fifth Agreement, you're probably wondering what has made these books sell tens of millions of copies and stay right at the top for almost 2 decades as some of the most highly in-demand spiritual books of all time. Well, you're about to find out, because in this special CE training with Don Jose, and I'm so excited for this, Jose is going to take us through all 5 agreements. So you're actually going to get a beautiful unraveling of why these agreements are so important in our life to help us live a life where we have solid character, where we are at peace with our world and the people around us, and we can truly be our greatest selves. This is going to be a really remarkable session. Let's get started. Hi everyone, and welcome to a truly special CE training with the one and only Don Jose Ruiz. Don Jose, it is so amazing to have you over here. And for those of you who don't realize it, we're actually here in Mexico, where Jose Ruiz was born. Jose Ruiz, for those of you who may not have heard of him, moved at the age of 21 to the United States to work and travel with his father, the legendary Don Miguel Ruiz. Don Miguel Ruiz is the author of some of the most incredible personal growth books in the history of the world, including The Four Agreements, The Mastery of Love, and many other amazing books. And Jose has become an incredible partner to his father. And Jose's book, The Fifth Agreement, has become legendary among people who follow this work. So there are so many amazing things about Jose. He's one of the most remarkable, fluid, inspiring speakers I've met. And we are actually here because Jose is speaking at A-Fest. He's one of our keynote speakers for our A-Fest festival right here in Mexico. And we're also filming a documentary about living from heart, living from mission. And Jose is being featured in that documentary. So Jose, I guess one of the ways for people to realize the impact of this work, we were just talking about this earlier, and you shared with me this hilarious story of Motley Crue. Tell us about that.
Yes, well, first of all, one of the things that really inspired me is Nicky Sixx, because he overcame heroin addiction. He came back from the dead. And when I read that he wrote about the Four Agreements, I was just in shock. But then when he asked my dad to interview him, and he was like, I was like so surprised that he gave us backstage passes to see him one time. And in this concert we went to, me and my fiance, you know, we were in the middle of the arena. And one of the songs, I just pulled some rings out that I just bought in the same concert. And I put up on the air, and we exchanged rings, and you know, we got a private ceremony wedding there.
You got married at a Motley Crue concert.
Yes.
That is so spiritual.
Yes, because everybody was so, you know, in their own, but we were in our heaven, you know.
I just wouldn't see you as a Motley Crue fan. And then you went backstage with Nicky Sixx, and he did the wedding ceremony for you.
Well, yes, it was the closing. When we got backstage, it was like the closing when we met him. It was like seeing the priest, you know, to give us the bows. But then after we met Nicky Sixx, we ran into Ozzy Osbourne, and he gave my fiancé a kiss on the lips. So when he gave a kiss on the lips, you know, like, I went, yes, it's Ozzy approved, you know, but all that was magical, magic experiences.
So I love that story because it gives you an example of how influential these books have been. So the Four Agreements, another interesting statistic. I was with Don Jose and Don Miguel Ruiz, and Don Miguel held up his phone and said, Vision, check this out. This was in May. And the Four Agreements had been written 19 years ago. And in May, when we met, it had once again climbed to the top of spiritual books. It was the #1 most purchased spiritual book in America 19 years after it was published. That's how influential these works have been. Now, the follow-up to the Four Agreements is an equally brilliant book called The Fifth Agreement. And this man right here is its author. You were telling me about another beautiful thing that just happened with the book with Tom Brady.
Oh, yes. Tom Brady also shared how that book has helped him in his life. And when he shared that on ESPN, ESPN wanted to interview my father. So my father went and gave a message, spiritual message on ESPN. And after that, the book started reselling back again. So he went back on top.
He went back to
Yes.
Amazon #1 again, 19 years after the book was published, just last week. And how cool is it that your father gets to get on ESPN and speak spiritual?
Yeah, that's the most beautiful things because my brother and my father, they love sports. So my brother was so happy because he was on his favorite channel.
Brilliant. So by now, you probably want to read the book. And what we're going to do in this training is actually go through the 4 agreements and the 5th agreement. This is going to be a beautiful training because you're going to understand why these ideas are so powerful and why they have shaped so many people's lives, from Tom Brady to Ozzy Osbourne to Motley Crue. So let's get started.
Yes, one of the most beautiful things as well, these were my idols growing up. And one of the beautiful things that, it also changed my life. Like this is one of the most beautiful things that it's not that I'm sharing the tradition that it was given to me. No, I'm sharing what changed my life. Because I remember when I first read it and I resisted reading it, I said to my father, "Hey, Father, I know this information." And he goes with a big smile, "Of course you know it. Everyone knows it because it's integrity talking to your integrity." And I said, these agreements are a piece of cake. I'm going to practice them. I'm going to master them so fast. But then like a month later, I go to my father saying, "Father, these agreements are so hard. They're difficult. I cannot do it." And he goes, "You know what? These agreements are easy. What's difficult is the agreements that you have made with your life. Like let's say the first agreement, to be impeccable with your word. You're totally not impeccable with your word," he says. I go, "What do you mean? Because you don't ever do what you say. You always dream about doing something, and you never do it." So in the moment I said, okay, it's time to really practice to be impeccable with the word. And something magical really happens when you begin practicing the impeccable word. You begin seeing the storyteller within you. You can see yourself telling yourself lies, giving yourself excuses. And in one way, I found out that I was disrespecting myself all the time because I was never impeccable with my word. But the moment that I began being impeccable with my word, my life began to change. It was like a rattlesnake shedding its skin. All the lies, all the judgments started getting out of my system because I was, for the first time, listening with respect to the voice within me. And when I started doing that, something magical happened. I began thinking impeccably. And when you think impeccably, you cannot even do a little white lie because it goes against your consciousness. So this was one of the greatest gifts for me, the first agreement, because it really tells you that in order to have a happy life and live in heaven, you have to have a clear consciousness.
So the first agreement is to be impeccable with your word. But give us an example. When are we impeccable with our word? Why should we be impeccable with our word? What does this do for us?
Well, it changes the storyteller, like saying in one point, "Oh, I can never change. I can never transform." Right there, you're disrespecting yourself. You're not being impeccable with your word because the word impeccable means sin pecado, without sin. And for me, the sin that I believe in is when we go against ourselves. That's a sin. So every time we speak and put ourselves down, it's like a scorpion that's stinging itself again and again with the same tail. It's paralyzing itself. So just imagine I'm saying, "I'm not perfect. Nobody loves me." I'm not being impeccable with my word. Or in the other ways, hurting people that, that I feel that they're so happy. So I said, "Oh, there cannot be as happy as I am. So I'm going to use everything in my words to give them poison." And this is what we do in life. And the sad thing about it is that we're doing without awareness because we're addicted. And what we are addicted to? We're addicted to suffering. And when we're addicted to suffering, what is our fix? Well, to corrupt the word. It's like in the Bible that said, the first was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. Because that's the word we create. And imagine when we stop disrespecting ourselves. We never knew because each generation is passing by. That's why in the Toltec tradition we go that we wake up one day when everybody is completely asleep. But we wake up with a consciousness to change, and this is what the impeccability of the word can do. Because now you're not impeccable. Now you're impeccable with yourself. And this is one of the most beautiful things when you look into the mirror and see how you were. It's like an addict goes, and says, "Hello, my name is so-and-so, I'm an alcoholic," or "I'm this. You look into the mirror and say, "I'm addicted to suffering." And when you say that, you give yourself power. And that gives you all the tools to go to the second agreement.
So Don Jose, what you're saying is that it's not just about being impeccable in our word in terms of the promises to ourselves or the commitments we make. I think you used the example of your father saying you don't do what you're going to do. So what you're saying is, what I got from what you just said is that we need to be true to ourselves by not putting ourselves down, because that goes against impecado. What language is that?
It's Latin.
Latin, impecado, which you said is the sin. And what I also got from that is that we should be committed to our words. If we say we're going to do something, we do something. But what I found interesting is the third thing you said. If I'm an addict, you admit you're an addict. It's about being honest to yourself about your own flaws. And I guess what you're saying is, by being honest to ourselves about our own flaws, we get to change them?
Yes, because one of the first rules of the art of happiness is that we're not happy all the time. The much love that we have, we also have hate within us, because that emotion runs through it. But one of the beautiful things about the tradition that teaches us is the rattlesnake. Why the rattlesnake is because when it's young, it cannot control its poison. You know, it gives you a whole dose. It's like when we're young, full of poison, we scream at people, we say mean things to them. You know, we're hurting. But when we grow up, we mature, just like the rattlesnake. When the rattlesnake matures, it still has poison, it has more poison, but it knows how to control it. So when you know how to control your emotional body, you're responsible for what you're giving out. Because when you awake, this is what I'm not sorry to say, you cannot put yourself back to sleep. So every act that you do, it will be louder and louder and louder. Every time you're not impeccable with your words, that you're not using it for poison, it will not feel good to you. So in this moment, when you're impeccable with your word, you start thinking impeccably. And it's like waking up. It's like the ancestors used to paint the third eye in the forehead. And everybody knows we don't have a third eye in the forehead, but it's the awakening of consciousness, because we begin to see. And what are we beginning to see? The addiction of suffering that exists all over the world of 3,000 of years ago, that, you know, the word got corrupted. So we're here in this generation now to uncorrupt this word. And how we're going to do it? By looking within us and being honest, because that's how we change the program, because we cannot delete a program in a computer if we don't know what it is, you know. And when we know what it is, what we're deleting, we will delete it. We will take it out of the system, and, you know, it will always get to temptations. Oh, we want to upload it again. We want to upload it again. You know, we have a bad day. I want to upload that, but, you know.
So it is so much more than just doing what you say you're going to do.
Yes, it's a lifestyle.
It's about being honest to yourself. So before we go on to the second agreement, I'd love to ask you a couple of clarifying questions on this first agreement, questions that I know our audience members would really want you to answer. The first is, are there some simple practices we can take home today that will let us practice being impeccable with our word?
Oh, yes, absolutely. First of all, saying what you eat, it makes you sick. What you eat makes your stomach sick. Okay, if you find out that whatever you're eating makes your stomach sick, don't eat it anymore. Don't eat it anymore. And that is a simple practice, because what's going to happen? The next time you you break your word, you're going to be eating that same thing, and the next day say, oh my God, I have the stomach pain again. I said I wasn't going to do this again. But that little thing let us know what we're doing in our life, how we corrupt our own word, how we break our own things that we have to do, because, you know, having a word to knowledge and, you know, many transformational books, we have the answers in us, you know, we have them already, but the difficult thing that happens is we don't apply them. And we all know what to do, but we don't apply them. So in the moment they begin applying, and it's in the little things. That's why I mentioned food, because that was personal for me, because I used to eat a lot of tacos, a lot of salsa, you know.
Right.
And, you know, I used to drink a lot of alcohol, and, you know, I always had stomach pain, and I always blame it on the chakra, blaming on this thing, you know. Right. But I never really look at the truth. The moment I started being impeccable with our word, you know, I started taking care of the body, and the body, you know, lost 100 pounds. Wow. I lost the cholesterol, the fat liver, everything that the doctors give me medicine for. I didn't need to take it, because all I have to do was be impeccable with my word and say no to the things that make me damage.
And that led you to be impeccable with your lifestyle.
Yes.
So the second question is, expressing yourself impeccably is to express yourself in the direction of truth and love. But how do you stay impeccable to your word when, you know, for those moments when you're feeling hurt, when someone really, really, really hurt you?
It's a beautiful one and a great one, because this is when we begin to respecting ourselves. This is when, you know, if you have a little kid that's frightened and is tired and is crying and is feeling beat up, you know, what are you going to do? Well, support him, support her, whatever you can do. Well, guess what? That's our body. Our body's the one that got hurt. Our mind, you know, can feed the body to get more hurt. But the moment that we stand comfortable in the uncomfortableness, it will begin to change. And we have to totally know that it's like in the second agreement, it has nothing to do with us. It has to do with somebody else, because somebody else is not being impeccable with their words. So what they're doing, patting the poison to us, is like somebody who's very upset, you know, that wants to find a mirror to look at his anger And he pushes you, and then all of a sudden you become that anger because you know you got infected. And this is one of the beautiful things to really be aware. Do not take things personal because you know many of things that people do have nothing to do with us. They're really asking for help because it's a fix. And that goes back to addiction of suffering. You know, we're all pushing our wounds and we're all maintaining us asleep. But the moment that you wake up, you can totally understand forgiveness. Forgiveness is forgiving someone who's sick. And you know, any alcoholic or drug addict is a sickness, you know? It's a sickness when you get into the system. So suffering is also a sickness that we look into our life. So having impeccable the word, saying, okay, I'm sick. I want to change this. That's the prophet I believe in. Not the prophet that I'm the fall of San Andres or this is going to fall. No, the prophet that I believe in is when you say to yourself, I'm going to change. And you keep your word. And when you're happy, then you change.
Wow, wow. Now what if you're being attacked by someone? What if someone says something nasty about you? You hear about that through a friend. Someone slanders you. What do you do?
Well, this is one of the beautiful things. I pick up the phone and say, you have a problem with me, you have a problem, but not in order to fight, you know, not in order to communicate. And, you know, and if it doesn't be respectful, so I have to say this humbly, you know, like a post that I saw on the internet once saying, just when two people walk out of each other doesn't mean they don't love each other, it just means that their part of their story has ended in their world. Because just imagine, if you have somebody, an uncle or a friend of the family who comes to your home and starts screaming at your kid, disrespecting your kid, what are you going to do? Just get the person out of your house and protect the kid. Well, guess what? Your physical body is a kid. It's a living being. So the one that you're protecting from, it is the body. And this is what I love this question because it shows us the beautiful things about religion, about the angels. Because in the Mexico, there's the Virgin of Guadalupe. And she represents the mother, the emotional of the human. And there's the aura, the sun that connects with the body and the earth. And then there's a little plate, a little moon plate, and an angel holding the moon plate. Well, the body of the mother represents our body, and the moon plate represents our mind. So when our mind takes care of our body, it's protecting it emotionally, that it doesn't matter who's hurting the body. We will always be protecting the mind. So if we protect the mind, the body will follow, because this is where we get our strength, and that's what a shaman Nahual is. And this is the beautiful thing about being impeccable with your word, because you give power back to you instead of giving power away.
Wow, I realize as I'm talking to you that there's, you can go so deep in just this one idea. Amazing. Now, another question is, how do you be impeccable with your word when you feel you need to criticize someone? Let's say the government. You need to vent on Facebook to criticize a government policy or a politician or a company that you feel is doing something that you fundamentally disagree with from, say, a humanitarian purpose. Isn't that breaking that rule of being impeccable?
Well, it's something that we're born to. It's like judgments. Judgment exists before we're born, when we're alive, and after we die. Corruption, sadly to say, has been from the beginning. Every time there's happiness, there's corruption involved. And people are choosing corruption over corruption. And what's happening is that we, the people, get corrupted too. We get power, we corrupt ourselves, we want to make a change. But the beautiful thing about what time has shown us is that we don't have to get weapons to fight these wars anymore for freedom, because we can see how corruption just passed on. This generation that we're living in, it really is changing because we're seeing now from the heart. So the little ones that are growing up, you know, that really saw Bernie Sanders, you know, wanting to help the people, not of politics, but just wanting to help every person in the world, you know, in being peaceful, you know, stop, you know, invading some places, you know, and just be how it is. And, you know, of course, there's a lot of money. When money comes in, there's greed. And that's the sad thing about power, you know, that it corrupts the soul. But that's the important thing. If you see that in the world, it doesn't affect you. Just imagine the seeds that you have in your heart to give. So it has to happen for a reason. You know, everything that we went in life, all the negativity that we went in life, that we're going through life, it happened because it inspired us to do what? To stand up and make a voice and make such transformational change.
So you're saying it's okay to criticize, say, a politician, but also understand that it is a catharsis, that it's happening for us to learn something.
Yes.
And to make a change.
Exactly, like this moment that I'm hearing the person, a candidate from the United States, Donald Trump, you know, and doing everything that he's doing negatively, you know, hurting people, and especially the women. Well, when he says those words, there's something happening in the world. For the first time I see in my lifetime how the power of the feminine power is growing back and is taking back into praise. So in one point, we say thank you to him. So let the world know that it has to end. Because that moment, our mothers, our sisters don't have to have secondary to the man or to anybody. We all are equal. And
Wow.
we're returning back to the point where we, respect the mother.
So you're actually saying we need to be, in a way, grateful for Trump's misogyny.
Yes, because it gave us the opportunity to be like the bees. And what did the bees do? They served their queen, the mother. And we're going back to that.
Wow, I love that. I love that.
And of course, it makes us triggers. You're like, I'm part Mexican, I'm
Yes.
Mexican. So it's like, hey, he's going again. But then I say, it's sleeping people, because at the same time, I'm seeing like the brothers from Haiti going to Tijuana, where I come from. And now the same people that I come from are discriminating the people. So, seeing that, I know there's nothing about our race or something like that. It's just a human thing. And it goes back to what? The addiction of suffering. So when you feel that, you will make peace wherever you come from. And this is one of the important things that, that negativity gives to us, because we're the angels.
What's the best way to respond when someone is criticizing or attacking you directly?
Well, one of the things that says, are you trying to fight with me? Are you trying to fight? And the person says, yes, I just walk away.
Got it, got it. So we've gone really deep in these ideas. Let's go on to the second agreement. And the second agreement is, don't take anything personally.
Yes, that's a big one. That's one thing that, ever since I was a kid, you grew up with the machismo, with in the streets, in the neighborhoods, And the first thing that they teach us is when somebody's walking, say, hey, what are you looking at? What are you looking at? To take everything personal, no? So we feel like everybody's attacking us, But the one thing that you have to understand is that this is the program that they were giving to us. This is the program that's been for 2,000 years of survival. And, it's a fake one. And, it was supposed to happen, but now we wake up. So now we can see every time we take something personal, is somebody invading our dream, or something invading our dream, or our parasite, like my father calls it. The negative part of us when we corrupt our own knowledge, and, it's affecting us, that we take ourselves personal. And just like he said to me once, imagine, son, if you take yourself personal, you're going to take the whole world personal too, because you see yourself in everything. But the moment that you stop seeing yourself, you don't take yourself personal anymore, you begin to change, because you see everybody sleeping. You see everybody dreaming their life. And what does everybody want to do? Impose their knowledge, impose their dreams, impose their way of life. If they see you happy, they want to smudge you down. That's why I said humbly, if somebody says something mean to you, judges you, just know that they're really asking for help, because that's a symptom of the addiction of suffering.
Beautifully said, beautifully said. Now, are there any tips or advice that we can take back into our lives to actually put this agreement in action?
Well, one of the things that I use personally, it comes a little, my father says, that's a little twisted, son, because I said to him at one point, I said, I like to be judged now, father. He goes, what do you mean? It's because every time I'm judged, I don't bite the apple. And every time I don't bite the apple, it gives me strength, And when I bite the apple, I know that there's something to learn. And that is the power of meditation, to get yourself back in the center.
Don't bite the apple.
Yes.
I love that metaphor. That's beautiful. So, are there any tips or common mistakes people have towards this agreement?
Oh, there's many things, because like my brother says, with all the 4 agreements, that they make it into the 4 conditions, saying, well, I don't hang around with people who are impeccable, they're not impeccable with the word. I don't hang around people who don't take it personal. This is life. We're going to live with our loved ones. We're going to live with our brothers and sisters. And when that happens, we co-create together. We co-live with life. We're not going to run away to an ashram. We're not going to run away to a temple. We're not going to run away to a pyramid and stay there and hide in a mountain. No. One time I started doing this because I was taking everything personal when I came back from a spiritual journey that I went to. And I started meditating for 2 to 8 hours a day. And father one day came in and says, knocking on the door, and says, son, what are you doing? I'm meditating. And says, what are you doing? I'm transcending, father, don't you see? He goes, you're not. He goes, what do you mean I'm not? I am doing it. And he goes, no, what you are doing is you are abusing meditation. And when he said those words, I took it personal. I said, I'm not abusing meditation. You see, right now, what good does it do you if you react for these little words,
Oh, brilliant.
So in that moment, he says, you still consider me your teacher? I said, yes, Father, always. Okay, now it's time for you to do this, and I'm still doing this teaching. He says, it's time for you to meditate with the eyes open. Just the moment that you sit down in your tranquility, when you finish yoga and you're in your peace, nothing can break that peace. Just continue walking, continue doing everything you do, but you always keep that peace because you're always giving seeds, but you always are in the center. And that's the powerful thing about meditating with the eyes open, is that you don't take things personal.
Mind blown. I love that. That was such a beautiful, gorgeous lesson. I love how you explained that. Not taking anything personally is like walking in meditation with your eyes open. Brilliant. What about for those times when someone criticizes us and we don't take it personally, but deep inside we feel awful?
Yes.
How do we deal with that feeling?
Well, one of the things is this, that is touching the wounds of the past, not the wounds of the now, the future. They're touching the wounds of the past. And when they touch the wounds, it's like a soldier who has PTS order, you know, the traumatic syndrome.
PTSD.
Yes, PTSD. So our body is traumatized. It's traumatized from being judged, for put down, for judgment, for being screamed at. It's terrified that every time somebody does that, our body has memory, you know. Our body has memory that, you know, it feels
Right.
like, but this is where I come to point when you begin to taking care of your body, it's like stepping into a living being. And when I find out this for myself, I said, oh my God, I know the meaning of life. I know the meaning of my life. And somebody said, what is it, Jose? Well, it's to take care of Jose. And he goes, why you say that? Why do you mean that? Because I know what makes Jose happy, and I know what makes Jose suffer. And how do I know this? Because I am Jose, you know. So the moment that we react to things, we take it personal, we begin to feel what? The emotional body, you know, talking to us. And this is what I like to say, you know, this is how we have a conversation with the creator, with the boss, I call. Because when we communicate with the body, we don't communicate in English or in Spanish or any other language. We're communicating through emotion and feeling the emotion. So every time that we take it personal, somebody react, we're feeling the emotion. So in that moment is when we use all our tools. And, you know, we calm the body down. And we say it has nothing to do with us, but it's like the grandma used to tell to me, we can control the elements, son. And I said, what do you mean the elements? The rain and the earthquakes? Not those elements, the elements within us. Because certain times when you get heartbroken, it feels like an earthquake. It feels like, you know, a catastrophe, a cataclysm. And when that happens, you just have to be there with you. And what happens when there's an earthquake or a rain storm? What happens, son? Well, I said to her, it ends. Yeah, it ends. So you have to be with yourself until that moment ends. And the moment ends, it's not to recreate it again, because something that the body does is trying to fish for stories. And I said, what do you mean, Grandma? Well, just fish for what you want to be sad for. And this is how people abuse, you know, the word of, you know, spirituality, because they're okay, but they have to find something to break, to fix the car again, because the addiction becomes of suffering is that you always have to fix yourself again and again and again. It's like my friend says, who used to be a mechanic. We mechanic, you know, we're some scam artists, some of us. Why you say that? It's because we fix a car, we put something else of the car so the customer can come back again. So when I was hearing that, I said, you know what? I don't want to be a broken car. I don't want to be a broken mechanic. I want to, you know, start really looking at my things. So not taking things personal is really a real transformational for us, because it tells us when we're not in the center, or when we already bit the apple, or, you know, or, you know. But the beautiful thing about this is having the consciousness that this is how the world lives, you know. This is what Father explains, that imagine being the only sober person in a world where everybody's completely drunk. Why waste time, you know? Try to tell them the message, telling, no, just be yourself, just be yourself. And it's a strength that we have, you know, as humans. When we have the power in ourselves, it's like opening the sun inside of us. And we just spread the light wherever we go, no matter what their mean is. And sometimes we take things personal because, you know, the boss is trying to teach us a lesson. And, you know, we learn that lesson, and then 1 month or 2 months later, we find somebody who's going through a difficult time, just what we experience, and we talk about it because we know what we're talking about.
Beautifully said. I love that quote, that it's like realizing that you're the only one sober in a world of drunk people. So you don't have to take it personally. And it reminds me of what you said earlier, just a few moments earlier, when you said that it's not about withdrawing from the world and trying to assume that everybody has to be perfect. Rather, it's like recognizing that we just have to have our own shit together. We have to be true to ourselves and know that other people might be a little bit drunk, but we don't have to judge them, nor do we have to feel attacked by them.
Yes, absolutely, because once we get awareness and we open our heart, we all know that we have a message to give. And, you know, heaven doesn't need heaven. Who needs heaven is hell. And wherever the boss puts us in hell, we're going to change it with our presence and create heaven and bring the seeds of heaven. And this is what we're here for.
this is a good time to go on to the third agreement, which is don't make assumptions.
Yes, this is one of my favorite agreements because this is the one that is like science fiction, you know, things that are not real.
Right.
And this really was a big lesson for me because I was afraid to communicate before. I was afraid to communicate what I feel. I was communicate to, you know, if someone was doing negativity, and I prefer to be quiet because I didn't want to, you know, to do things. So I make the assumptions that they probably know what I'm feeling. They probably think, you know. And what is happening is that I just covering my eyes, covering my ears, and not listening to anything, not wanting to see anything. But the moment I begin respecting myself, you say, you know what? I don't want to make assumptions anymore because I right now want to feel I want to go beyond the fear that I have and communicate to one another. So just imagine the power of communication and not having to, you know, to hide what you feel or to say what you say. You know, and it just breaks a lot of things because if someone is respecting you and you just voice it out, the abuse will end. And if in a relationship too, you know, happens a lot when people think, oh, they're cheating on me, they're being unloyal for me, and it's not really the case. But they're feeling of fears or something else, and instead of communicating with the love partner, they believe the hypocrisy, the gossip, and then they get that for life instead of just going for the person, hey, this is happening, let's communicate. And when that happens, you know, everything becomes clear on the table. It's like having the medicine bag open and says, you know, this is a sacred bag. Let's keep our relationship sacred.
So are there any specific steps or models that we can take into our lives to practice this agreement?
Yes, many things, you know. Like first of all saying, you know, well, I assume that I cannot change because I'm like this, because I'm like that. I assume that those persons are like this and they will never change because they're like this, like that. So we're already writing a story for them, you know, for our life that is not even really truth. It's just a comfort zone, and this what happens is that we stay in an island of safety. What's an island of safety? A pain that we're used to. And the challenge it is to walk out of that island of safety, to go beyond the fear of the unknown. And what's stopping you? If it's things from the past, pick some stones up that you give meaning to it. Okay, this is the stone of the mask that, you know, that hurts me, that says I'm not perfect, that no one loves me. Okay, this is the one that I'm abusing food, you know. Every stone that stops you from, you know, hurting yourself, know it. Know what it is you give power to. And then from there with communication, say thank you for everything. The good moments, the bad moments, like my uncle used to say to me, I don't need you anymore. Leave that dream behind. And from that point on, you're communicating not to anybody else, you're communicating to yourself. Like in this moment, it might feel like I'm communicating to you guys, but you know, I'm really going inside with myself and communicating to myself because every time I have the opportunity to hear the word, you know, it's like a seed getting planted, and with the action of not making assumptions, you know, that flower begins to grow and is protected.
Now, my question on this is, I know that some assumptions are good for us. For example, assuming that people are inherently good. So is there a criteria of assumptions? Are there assumptions that are good and assumptions that are bad?
Yes, of course, because one of the greatest assumptions, you know, is like a police officer. When he pulls somebody off the road, he has to make the assumption that that person has a gun, even though if it's not has a gun, because he's protecting, you know. He has to know what he has, so that's a positive one, you know. But there's the assumption, you know, that there's completely negative ones that say, you know, it's like the wolf, you know. The wolf, when it cries over nature, you know, it cries naturally. But sometimes when we cry for things that happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago, things that are not really happening right now. So when that is happening, you know, it's like it's an inorganic pain. So what leads us to inorganic pain? Inorganic thoughts, inorganic assumptions that lead us to a way to getting us back into suffering. And it all ties into the addiction of suffering because, you know, we're so smart that we create any excuse, any justification to not change because we're comfortable where? In an island of safety, in a pain that we're used to. And this is like staying in an abusive relationship for many years. You know, I know many people who stayed in abusive relationships because they're afraid of the unknown. They prefer a pain that they're used to than giving themselves a freedom.
So, okay, so some thinkers say that if you're in a relationship, it's healthy to assume that you are being loved, right? Are you saying that this is wrong?
No, assume by being loved is never things because you know that you're loved or you know that you don't love. You know that they're loving you or you don't know they're loving you. And if you feel like there's not love, this is where I come back for communication. To make that communication say, hey, it hurts me. Like one of the most challenging things that I did in my life was end my 9-year marriage with my ex-partner. And the thing is that our relationship was a a relationship of disrespect. It began beautiful, but then we used each other to hurt ourselves. And I said, you know what, if I really love this person, you know,
Right.
I have to let her go. And I went to talk to her, you know, I'm not happy anymore. I know we're not happy. She didn't want to listen to it. She blamed me for it. I said, no problem, you know, because it's not about ego, it's about happiness, you know. And it's one of the hardest things that I did. And 1 month later, I tried to go back, get a phone call, but I just, you know, I put the phone down. 1 year later, she calls me and says, thank you. Thank you for doing this. I wasn't happy for many years. Thank you for taking that action. It's because, you know, you take the action and you let go. You cannot assume, you know, I hope I can change this person. You know, I stay longer, I can change this person. That's an assumption. It's better to clarify things. And, you know, we try things, you know, we did try. But in the trying, you know, we know that wasn't so we assumed that it was going to change in the future.
And what about applying this thing? Make no assumptions to, say, a work environment. Sometimes in a work environment, we are forced to make a rapid decision. We got to act on assumptions.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's beautiful, you know. It's like Nicky Sixx once said and taught me, you know, that I learned from one of his things. He says, you know, I played this song Friday night, and I'm just beating myself up because I could have played it better. I could have played it better. Well, guess what? He learned how to play it better, he said. By the next time, he'll play it differently, you know. So we all create mistakes, you know, or create things in the office space, in the workplace. And when we make a mistake or something that we didn't like, we don't do it again. And this is something that we can learn from every place of life. Like I learned this completely, not from the forest or the desert ceremonies that my father did. I went to a drum class and my drum teacher taught me this in the most simple way. And he was saying me how I was drumming and I came out of my rhythm. And he said, you know what you did? Yes, okay, don't do it again. Just put it in that moment and, you know, learn from the lesson.
So the story of drumming brings us to agreement number 4, which is always do your best.
Oh, this is one of my dad's favorite agreements. He always says that because without this agreement, the other ones don't have a life. And I say, what do you mean by that? It's because if you don't do your best, you don't try. If you don't try to be impeccable with your word, you will never be. If you don't try to make it personal, you will never be. So in trying, you do. And in you do, you practice, and practice becomes the master. But this is a more beautiful thing that when we have the opportunity to do our best. So when we do something and judge ourselves, why do we judge ourselves? Because, you know, it's like wanting to get water from a rock. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. But sometimes we just are so addicted to judging ourselves that we do it anytime. Everything we do, we judge ourselves. So that's something to break the spell off, you know. When we do our best, it's because we're giving a gift. And when we give a gift, we don't give a gift to hurt ourselves or anybody else. It becomes a gift of life, so it's an action. So this is what I love about the expression of the divine, because sometimes, you know, we open our hearts and words just come through us because, you know, we're doing our best, because we're getting ourselves out of the way and magic happens.
Are there any systems or practices that we can bring into our lives to be doing our best at all possible times?
Oh, this is one of my favorite things that I like to share. One of the only homeworks that I share with people and friends is to get a recording device, press record, speak from your integrity, from your impeccability, you know, with all the open heart, and record a message. And, you know, do your best doing it. And then push stop and listen to it, you know, like you're listening to an audiobook, you know, in your car or in the gym or in your office, you know, and then listen to it again. But the important thing about this homework it is, the next time you get off your center, the next time you bite the apple, the next time that you feel suffering, is to get a recording device, push play, and listen to the real you, because who else can get you out of suffering than you? You can listen to many people, but when you listen to the real you, it just does something to your body. It says, I remember.
Powerful trick.
Yes, it's like saying, I remember, Mara. I remember you put me to sleep, now wake up.
What do you think are some of the biggest mistakes people make in living this agreement in their lives?
Well, it's like my brother says in his book, The Levels of Attachment, it's that we become, you know, we make these conditionals. We make it a law, you know. I don't hang with spiritual people. I don't hang with people who are not spiritual. I don't hang with people who are not impeccable with their word. I don't hang with people, you know. It's like putting negativity to the divine again, you know.
Right.
And one of the beautiful things it is to not become obsessed, to not become that addicted that you have to open and fix, open and fix, open and fix. Let what is fixed, let it be happy, you know. Let the bird fly. Don't put it on parole. Don't put it given conditions, because it's one of the things that we do. It's like we find the freedom in our heart and the eagle flies free. And what do we do right away? We put the eagle on parole. If you do this, I'm putting you back in the cage. You know, the eagle is free to do whatever it's going to do. And we're going to let a lot of eagles fly free in our life. And you know, when our word gets out there, it has life of itself. It does the magic, because the real magic, like I said earlier, is coming from the big boss. We get out of the way and he's speaking through us, and we become, you know, messengers of the divine.
Talk about that for a moment. Messengers of the divine.
Yes, well, one of the things is that we all are messengers. But the question it is, what kind of messengers are we? What is the message that we give to the people we say we love with all our hearts and to ourselves? And you don't have to answer out loud. Just listen to yourself. Is you giving yourself a message of judgment? Of torture? Is that what you want to receive? And if you don't like that message, and the answer is no, then change it. Because you have the power to change everything you do. And in the Toltec, we know that the word angel means messenger. So we all are angels. And I remember when I was a kid, I learned to pray to the outside, that there's a guardian angel protecting me from the outside. It took me like 30 years to find out that the guardian angel is myself. Because when I pray, I listen. And when I listen to my prayer, it's the one that takes the action. And when I'm done with myself, I can continue with my brothers and sisters. That's why when you connected with somebody and you pass through some experiences, the boss puts you in front with those people. And everything that we went through is not in vain. Everything was a perfect order. In one part of life, I really believe in my heart that this life is already dreamt. And we're here to see the beauty of it. And when we wake up, we can totally see the gift. And the gift is to be alive. And you know how many times we are ungrateful. You know, one time I tried to take my own life, and that's one of the most ungrateful things that I have ever done in my life. It's like somebody giving you a gift, and you just grab it and throw it away. You know, that's how our life is going to be always. But the moment that you receive the gift and say, thank you, I love this toy, I love this pet, you know, I love this human, because with this one I can interact, I can give my words to. So these 4 agreements, you know, get planted into a human being. And with this human being is ready to give the goodness wherever it goes. That's why this work is being translated in more than 37 different languages, different religions, different ways of life, because we go back to the first thing. It's integrity talking to integrity. And the world is ready now.
Now, in terms of always doing your best, how do we avoid being trapped into the cycle of perfectionism?
Yes, because sometimes we want to know everything. But what happens when you try to put a lot of information to a computer? It will break down. And we're not meant to know everything. We will know in the moment. We don't have to know the complete answer of the secret of the universe. It will come in the moment. When we need it, it will come. Because how many CDs do you have in your collection, or records, or tapes, or songs in your iTunes account? Do you listen to them all? No. You just pick the ones that you want to, and you take them up, because if you take all of them, your iPod or your thing might crash. And something that happens too. And then, and if our computer is slow, what happens? When we try to think about something, it's downloading. It doesn't want to get there, because we have so much stuff that we don't need in our head. But the moment that we don't have the stuff in our head, it just comes and we just move softly, truly. And it's beautiful, you know. And I really love what humans have done with technology, you know. Because I used to carry a bunch of CDs everywhere with me, but now I just carry the little machine.
Beautiful. Now, this question comes from one of our subscribers. How good is best? If we can always improve, and I know this is an assumption, she said, what is the system that helps us classify something we are doing as our best so that we can move on?
A smile. When you do something and makes you smile, that's it. You did your best. It's like if you play music and you're with a bunch of guys and girls playing music, and then you hit the recording and you push a play, and everybody's smiling at the production, you know.
Right.
Or when an event is done, you know, and you see the videos of all the people who transform their life, you get a smile.
So we know our best from how we feel.
Yes.
From our own emotional state.
We don't create a story.
Fantastic.
We just feel it.
So now we're going to move into the 5th agreement, which is the subject of your book, The 5th Agreement.
Oh, yes. It's one of the beautiful things about the 5th agreement. When I said to my friends, I said, what is the 5th agreement? It's to be skeptical but learn to listen. And my friend says, Jose, that sounds negative. Well, just imagine if you think negative, that will be negative. But just imagine if you think positive. Every negative thing that you have, you will not believe it. And when you begin living this way, you begin to act to filter out the negative. So there's a lot of negativity out there. There's a lot of people buying into negativity. And especially, you know, like this election, you know, There's a lot of energy happening in social media that people are getting into their phones, in their computers, and they're feeling the depression of it. You know, there's an energy happening around it, but what it comes down is that we have to be skeptical of what humans do and say, you know, because at the end, it's the boss, you know, the creator, God, whatever you want to name, is creating this dream. So when we get into this point of living and we have that faith in us, the only thing we can do is do our best, get out there and vote with a prayer, vote with intent that you want the best, not out of hate, not out of anger, because what that happens when you do something out of anger and hate, it just comes back to you. When you start doing lies and hiding stuff, you know, it only goes back to you. So when you vote with love, vote with respect, not with hate, not with trying to hurt other people, but for the better of this country, but the better of the world, because, you know, this is affecting the whole world. So the most world that is affecting is our own individual world, because we're eating this negativity. And, you know, this is how people in the past have taught other people how to hate people, how to not trust the government. And, you know, the government has been living for a lot of years. And what did Jesus do? When they got into him, he forgave them. He said they don't know what they do. So this is exactly what I'm saying again. People, they don't know what they do. They're blinded by hate. One day will come, a point, when someone's going to open their heart and, you know, bring this dream that we all dream together and make this world a better place. And, you know, it's happening right now. So the important thing it is to not believe all the negativity is going out there. Be skeptical to it. Listen to the heart. Learn to listen to you. And when you vote with love and respect. And let the rest do what is going to be, because, you know, there's a big dragon living in this world even before we're born. And it will continue living after we're dead. So the only thing we can do is just do our best, you know, from the bottom of our heart.
Now, you say in the fifth agreement, be skeptical, but learn to listen. Let's break that down into two different things. First, why do we need to be skeptical? Isn't that a bad quality?
Well, it's about breaking the habit, saying, oh, I want to drink, like to alcoholics saying, I want to drink, I want to drink, I want to drink. Well, it gets all his power to not believe himself from having that drink, especially if something bad happens to it in the day, you know, that makes him react. And that saying no to that gives him more power. And this is one of the beautiful things. And learning to listen is learning to listen to your body, learning to listen to what makes you happy, to what you're feeling. And to be skeptical that we talk about is not about the good things in life, it's about the negative that make us hurt ourselves. It's like Grandma talk about the scorpion that stung itself again and again with the same tail, same poison, you know, because, you know, because we're not skeptical of our own negativity, because we believe our negativity. And the problem that happens is that we believe our negativity so much that we contaminate other people, you know, just like people do in the political world, you know. They believe they're poison so much they try to wake up the hate in everybody, you know, and then everybody is hating. I remember somebody screaming in the street in one day in the computer saying, I'm mad, and somebody asking, why are you mad? Because no one else is mad, you know.
Right.
It wanted the world to, you know, to be like that.
So you're saying, be skeptical of that which is negative. Be skeptical of negative news. Be skeptical of negative ideas, negative self-judgments that come into you. Have that basic filter. But how do we know if it's negative or if it's right?
Oh, we just feel it. We just feel it, you know, like we just feel it in our heart. If we do good, we feel good, and if we do bad, we feel bad, just like Abraham Lincoln say, you know, and it's an act of respect. And when you respect yourself, you're not gonna put poison. That's what I told you earlier about being impeccable with the word. When we apply this agreement, something magical happens into our life. We begin thinking impeccably. And we think impeccably, you know, we don't have to find the answer outside of us because we already know. We only want to find the answer outside of us because we don't trust ourselves. Because, you know, that's what we have learned all our life. That when we're skeptical of our own negativity, we're breaking that spell. We're breaking that enchantment. And when we break that enchantment, you know, the real us comes up. And who's the real us? We're life. And life is coming through us again. So I have to say humbly, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Whoever's going to win is going to win. We, the people, we, the human beings in this earth, you know, are making this world a better place, starting in our home, in our workplace. And this will grow because, you know, they might be a little toddler being born right now. And everything that we do, you know, is perfect because we're just living our way authentically, that, you know, we're going against our own negativity by being skeptical because we're not going to allow this negativity to touch the little child because we're learning from the mistakes. And this is something that my grandmother taught me. She said to me, if I catch you doing what I do, you're killing the Toltec tradition. And if I catch you doing what your father's doing, you're killing the Toltec tradition because you have to learn from your own life how you overcome who? Yourself. And how you overcome yourself, this is how you take the torch of the Toltec and pass it to the future. So, it's all about having a happy heart, Our
Now,
heart.
the second part of the fifth agreement, so the first part is be skeptical, but the second part is, but learn to listen. Explain that portion to us.
To learn to trust your instinct, Like how many times do we don't trust our instinct? We kind of know that we have to go right, but we say we have to go left, so we go left. But we didn't trust our instinct. And how many times do we have an idea, but we don't want to take action about it? And then we pass like 1 year later downtown, and then we see a window, and then we say, hey, I had that idea a long time ago. But we didn't take the action. The important thing is about taking the action, because when you know, you will know. And something beautiful that our body tells us, is it tells us, when we are present and when we're not present.
Beautifully said. So, what are some systems that people could start using to bring this fifth agreement into our lives?
Well, every time that the negativity comes knocking on your door, open the door, feel it. Feel it. But the one that's feeling it is your positivity, seeing with the eyes of the truth, with the heart completely open, and know that the negativity cannot live if you don't give it attention. So wherever you put your attention, that's what you're going to perceive. That's the open vortex that they taught us when we were kids. To open a vortex is that you believe in it and you open it. But if you don't believe in it anymore, it's like that vortex closes, and it's like a story that my father said to me when I was a kid. Imagine the Greek gods talking amongst themselves in the top of a cloud, and they speak. We will only live until the human believe in us. When they no longer believing in us, we no longer exist. So when he finished saying that story, I was in my head, what gods do I have alive in my head? The God of judgment, the God of hatred, the God of judging other people, judging myself. So if I stop putting attention to those gods, they will no longer live in my life. And this is exactly what I'm talking about, negativity. Because negativity is a language that's being spoken all over the world, same as positivity. So there's two languages being spoken. And it's like one of my teachers from the Inca world, Don Jorge Delgado, said to me that one apprentice came to him and says, Master, 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 I have two pumas. One represents negativity, one represents positivity. Master, 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 which one will win? And my teacher said, whichever one you feed.
I like that. I like that story. Are there any common tips or misconceptions that people have on this particular agreement?
Yes, one of the things is say that we have to be skeptical, that we're more intelligent than anybody else, don't believe anybody, disrespecting anybody. It's not about that. It's about not believing your own negativity, the thing that takes away your inspiration out of your life, because the word Toltec means artist. So we're really saying what takes the inspiration out of the artist. And for you to identify what takes your inspiration away, once you identify it, you have all the power to not give it power anymore, because you have come back home. And like Siddhartha said to Mara, architect, you will not build your home here anymore, because I am present and I will guard this temple. And that's what I will do to the rest of my life.
I did not know that. Toltec means artist. Now, all of this wisdom that you and your father, Don Miguel Ruiz, have written about, all of this came from Toltec tradition?
It's from the Toltec, but my father says now, he doesn't talk about the Toltecs about 2,000 years ago, no. He's talking about the Toltecs now, the Toltecs right now. And if you can see, the Toltecs were just artists. They were called the religious, spiritual artists. And even the lands that we are right here, right now, they're so sacred because that's when the Maya and the Toltecs merged, and they created the dream of Kulkulkan, feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl, which means a divinity inside within us. So when we know this, we know that we're all a divinity. We just sometimes are sleeping, and we like to be sleeping. We don't want to wake up. But this is what I say. Once you wake up, I'm not sorry to say this to you, you can no longer put yourself back to sleep. And that gives you respect to yourself. So anytime you're not impeccable with your word, you will know. Every time you take it personal, you will know. Every time you're making assumptions, you will know. And every time you're making your best, not making your best, you will know. This is the important thing about being skeptical, but learning to listen to your own world.
Thank you so much. Now, just a couple of clarification questions on the fifth agreement. Are there situations where being skeptical of everything might not be the best idea?
Oh, absolutely, because then that becomes obsession. We have to be skeptical of everything. No. We just have to be skeptical when negativity comes into our head. When we beat the apple, when we take it personal. And that's when we do something that I love to do every day. Every day that I wake up, I make a prayer. And my prayer is, may life protect me from myself. That's my prayer. And then from this point on, if I get into negative moment, I just have to remember to be skeptical of my own negativity. And I begin practicing it, so it takes me a few moments to calm down. I get away from everybody so I can go back to myself, to not believe myself again. And then I come recharged to wherever I go, because this important thing to find your space when you react or something like that, to find your tranquility, because if you get somebody to use and start using that person to hurt and go back and make that alive, you're not only hurting yourself, but you're hurting that person, and that's what the message of negativity comes out. That's when we know that the message of positivity lives within us. We take care of ourselves, because we cannot give what we don't have.
So the second question is, questioning a limiting belief and having the will to change is part of the solution, right? Is there a Toltec approach to removing limiting beliefs?
Well, one of the beautiful things is about dropping the human form. And of course, many people thought about that, we're dropping the human form.
Right.
Think about it's not the physical body, it's the ego. Because the ego is the one that gets hurt. The ego is the one that takes it personal. The ego is the one, that lives in negativity. But if you drop the ego, if you're just happy with what you have, nobody can take away your heaven. No matter if you get locked in a cell, nobody can take away your heaven, because you are with you. And in that moment, you know that you're doing your best. And you're really learning to listen to what? To life. Because what's outside is within us. And if you find the perfect equilibrium with everything, you make peace with everything. That's why I say in the elections, whatever has to happen, has to happen. But my beautiful thing that I love about this is that it's showing the world how humanity has disrespected women for a long time. And that is ending. That is ending, yeah. That is begin to end. I see it.
So you think what's going on right now with the unnatural hatred towards Hillary, with Trump coming out and talking about grabbing things, you're saying that this is just a massive catharsis of all this negative crap coming out, because we're about to reach a new plateau of humanity, which is about truly respecting the feminine.
Exactly, because this mentality is a result of what happened long time ago, of putting women down. And that's the way they live. And these were just little kids who were just being brought up that way. And I remember being a little kid, if you're not macho enough, if you're not talking like that, that you get beat on, you get booed on, and you take things like that. So we go against ourselves, and this is what I say, machismo is a lie. Because every machista that I know, they are alone. They're needed of love, they push everybody away, and they're always cold, and their heart is always closed, and that's why they're gonna suffer. And just imagine the pain that lives inside those people.
Wow.
This is the coming from when we're kids. So that's why I say how we're living right now is the message that we're giving to the little ones, because the little ones learning not what we say to them, they're learning how we're living. And that's what we're passing by. That's why I say, by having all this on television, on the media, saying, hey, I don't want my mama being treated like that. I don't want my sister being treated like that. So the mentality is about to change. It's changing already. And it's a beautiful dream, because I love the Krishna energies coming back into life.
You're right. There's a flip positive side to everything that has happened. So before we wrap up, I'd love for you to just recap the 5 agreements.
Well, the first agreement is one of my favorite one, and most one helped me in my life, is to be impeccable with your word. Because when you use your word as a magic tool to bring positivity into this world, you're stopping talking a negative language. And the negative language is the one, hypocrisy, hatred, judgment, and all that is corrupting our world and dries it up and eats it. And by being impeccable, we begin to think impeccably. And we cannot even make a little white lie. Do not take things personal. It's a beautiful thing, because we learn forgiveness. We learn to say that everybody's hurting just like we are. And we don't want to take them personal anymore. And this is really the healing that has to be in this world. And by not making assumptions, it is coming back to respect the word.
Number 3.
Yes. Then number 3, it is to always be open to communicate, to not shake in feeling that you cannot communicate. No, if you feel fear to communicate, even if it feels, just imagine a little boy, getting beat up, and the bully will always beat on him until the boy speaks up and say, no more. And that's exactly what the power of not making assumption it is, to have your word and to have the clear communication. And to the 4th one, to always do your best. It's like Father says, it's one of his favorite, because that's the one that gives life to everything. And this is what teaches us not to judge ourselves any longer, because if we don't judge ourselves, who can judge us? The judgments will end in our life. And this is so magical when that happens. And the 5th one is the one that helped me personally to not believe in my own life, because I remember I said to my father, how can I help you? How can I say thank you? How can I say thank you and repay you for everything you've given to me? And he said these words, easy, son, help me to change the world. I go, hold on, I don't want that responsibility. He goes, don't be silly. I want you to change the world in your own head. Every time you say you're not perfect, every time you say that you're not meant for love, every time you go against yourself, I don't want you to feed that. I want you to be skeptical and learn to listen. Learn to listen to the real you. And this is what I'm saying to you. Help us to change the world by changing your world and listening to the real you. Because when the real you comes out, it's the authentic you. And the world is ready for your seeds.
Beautiful closing. I love how you bring in all these amazing stories of you and your father and your family. The whole Ruiz family has such an incredible impact on personal growth. Amazing stuff. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, brother, for your message and everything.
Take care.